Well, more than 60 members of the European Parliament are demanding an emergency meeting to push for a plan of action on Israel in a letter sent to the EU's foreign policy chief. The letter says a recent EU-Israel agreement on aid delivered no tangible change in conditions on the ground for Palestinians in Gaza. It said that while Palestinian children are dying of starvation, the bloc is responding with weak words and no action. The MEPs want the EU Foreign Affairs Council to be convened immediately. Well, we are joined by Lynn Boylan, an Irish member of the European Parliament and the chair of the European Parliament Delegation for Relations with Palestine. She joins us live from Dublin. Thank you for your time. Has there been any response yet to your letter calling for this emergency meeting pushing the EU for action on Israel?
Not yet. We haven't received any response from the High Representative Kaja Kallas. We have had other MEPs contacting us, though, to add their names to the letter. So we're up to 67 MEPs now, and that number continues to rise, which I suppose just reflects the deep level of frustration, anger, heartbreak that members of the European Parliament feel at the lack of action by the European Commission, by the European Council and its member states to deal with this genocide and to deal with this man-made starvation of the Palestinian people.
What action would you like the EU to take against Israel?
There's a range of actions that could be taken. I mean, Kaja Kallas herself has outlined 10 of those at the last council meeting in July, but we've now had two opportunities where the Foreign Affairs Council met, the member states discussed actions against Israel, and on both occasions failed to take any action. We then heard from the Commissioner that instead they didn't want to punish Israel, they wanted to engage with them, and they wanted to see an improvement in the humanitarian aid. Those of us who've been watching this unfolding for, since October 2023 knew that there would be no change in the aid because Israel has allowed to act without consequences. So whatever guarantees they would give to Kaja Kallas were not going to be kept. And we've been proven right now with what we're seeing unfold. So there are a list of measures. I think the first and foremost would be a suspension of the preferential trade arrangements. That only requires a qualified majority at the Council. The European Commission can also take actions without having to get approval from the Council as well. They could suspend Horizon research funding, which I think is worth up to $1 billion to the Israeli state. So there are a number of actions. I mean, what the letter that we wrote to the Commissioner has outlined in calling for, complete cessation of trade with Israel, sanctions on individuals, sanctions on the GHF, and also a two-way arms embargo. But even today, without having a majority or unanimity at the Council, the Commission can take action. And I think that's why you're seeing lawyers now taking the Commission to court because they're not opposed to treaties.
Why do you think the EU has been so slow to act? As you say, your own research from the EU's diplomatic services found Israel violating its human rights obligations under Article 2 of the EU-Israel Association Agreement. So why stand by and do nothing?
Well, I think the first and foremost reason, one has to be honest, is it has to be racism, because clearly Palestinian lives are not seen by the elite in the EU as equivalent to, for example, Ukrainian lives, because this is where the duplicity that's so blatant and is so frustrating for not just for members of the European Parliament like myself, but also for the public. Because we saw the swift action that was taken when Russia illegally invaded Ukraine, and we haven't seen any action from the EU. So the first and foremost thing you would have to say is they do not view Palestinian lives as equal. Secondly, I think it's very clear that Israel is quite influential within the European Union. We see that also in Britain and in the US, and that there's a chilling effect that if you dare to speak up against Israel, if you dare to call out the war crimes that you're witnessing, there is immediately a backlash and an attack on whoever dares to call it out. I mean, we're seeing it in Ireland, my own country now, because we're trying to just implement international law in terms of the occupied Palestinian territories. and banning trade with those territories. And we are seeing IPAC in the US taking out opinion pieces in high-profile newspapers condemning Ireland and calling us anti-Semitic. So that's the reaction that you get from the Israeli state when you try to just ask them to uphold international law like we ask of every country in the world. So there is a fear factor, I think, as well within some European leaderships of what the consequences would be in taking action. But I think now that the consequences for leadership for not doing the right thing will be with their own electorate, because we are seeing people taking action themselves. We're seeing people power, whether it's the stopping of the docking of a boat in Cyprus, whether it's Palestine action in Britain. People are taking to the streets. They're taking their own direct action because their politicians are failing them.
Lynn Boylan, thank you so much for your time today. Irish member of the European Parliament, joining us there from Dublin.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.